So we talked about ADHD. We're continuing. We're in chapter 7. Now it's memory strategies. 3 strategies. You use it. We use it. Children start learning how to use it. Rehearsal, organization, and elaboration. And these strategies are also supported by culture and also formal schooling. I mean, I don't know how it was with you, but I remember when I started first grade years ago, birinci sınıf, they got the lunchbox, beslenme çantası, they got the school bag, and then they got a little, what is it? Ödev defteri. Didn't you have one?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay. I'm so old that some of these practices weren't being practiced when you were young. That's why I'm asking. So, but it was important that every day we wrote whatever the homework was from whichever class, right? And it was like we were told that you think you will remember, but you will not remember, which we figured out was correct. I mean, that homework thing was a problem. But what I'm trying to tell you is that formal schooling actually teaches children how to use their both attention and memories better, right? So it helps. Yes. Media multitasking disrupts learning, it says. Yes, many 8 to 18-year-olds regularly media multitask. I am not between this age range, but I try and fail like them too. Research indicates that it reduces learning, and so there's difficulty filtering out irrelevant stimuli, and the information you learn is never transferred to both memories, and so it kind of stays and lingers in one realm. So there's a little discussion box in your book if you're interested. It's trying to convince you that when you study for the exam, you shouldn't also be watching Netflix, no streaming. Recognition and recall, again, you guys have all taken cognitive, and so these are not unfamiliar terms for you. Recognition is noticing that a stimulus is identical or similar to one previously experienced, and this is easier than recall. Recall requires reconstruction from scratch. It requires input from both memory and imagination. So recall is generating mental representation of an absent stimulus. It is more difficult. It starts recall, or we understand that it is there through deferred imitation, and we talked about this in cognitive development, chapter 6. It is also tied to language development. Language becomes a very important tool that later on helps us represent things that happened in the past, for example. In that sense, it also aids in recall. Reconstruction is selecting and interpreting into information that is encoded, stored, and retrieved. The idea is that we're not passive recipients of information. Information is not imprinted on us. We are not photocopy machines. We don't work like cameras. So every time you take information in this lecture, in other lectures, it is filtered. You interpret that information, and when you retrieve it too, such reconstruction also happens. So we sometimes do think of ourselves as if like our memories, sometimes we have wrong notions of the memory. We may think that because you saw something, you're going to remember it as it was, which is actually not the case, because every time you recall something, you're actually reconstructing it. The fuzzy trace theory says that in every stimulus experience, when we encode it, it leaves a trace. And what we encode also differs. Young children, for example, are more likely to encode things verbatim. Verbatim meaning without any change as it is, değiştirmeden, olduğu gibi, right? But as we grow older, we learn to store the gist. Gist, what is gist in Turkish? Ana fikir, özü. So you no longer have to write, for example, if you're taking notes, you don't write every single word that comes out of my mouth. For one thing, I say many things that aren't related. I make jokes, you know. I try to remember people's names. Those things should not be in your notes. What you take a note of is what you think is the gist of what I said, right? And as children get older too, here you have preschoolers and second graders, and as you see, these are mean memory score, and it seems like in the GIST test, they're actually scoring the red bar much higher than preschoolers, and when you look at it, they're stronger suit, they have stronger remembering of GIST memory rather than verbatim. And this is how ours is too. So the second graders are coming closer to adults in that respect. This is how we think, how we remember too. Semantic memory is conceptual memory, is vast. It is the knowledge that you have acquired about concepts in the world, and it's organized, both taxonomically and also hierarchically. There's an organization to it. It grows from episodic memory. Episodic memory is your memory of actions, right? And through actions, so think about it, with children, through actions, they learn information, right? With very young children, through actions, they learn the properties of objects and many other features of objects, whatnot. And so those will provide the raw data for semantic memory. And they will become, as children grow older, the knowledge base become larger, it gets better organized into classes. So four-legged animals, dogs, cats, four-legged animals. Huh? Cows, yes. Tigers, wolves, yes. And so as the child's experience with the world increases, their semantic memory also will increase. One of the bases of it is also repeated events, which are also called scripts, which also serve as the base for autobiographical memory. Scripts are general prescriptions of how things unfold in familiar situations.
Like schemas?
Like schemas, yes, but they're for sequences of actions. For example, you have probably a script for going to a fast food restaurant. Let's say fast food restaurant, buy döner. Is there a restaurant such? Maybe I should eat döner. So the idea is you go, you order, you pay, you wait for the food. I assume. I don't think I've ever been to buy döner, but you take your tray and then you go sit. The same thing happens for McDonald's. It doesn't matter if you're going to McDonald's in Kent Park or if you're going to McDonald's in Paris. The same script works, right? So children construct memories of these scripts. And these scripts will also later serve as the foundation for their autobiographical memory. Scripts such as dinner time, scripts such as bath time. And it is very important for families to establish routines, right? And I'm sure Emre Bey knows it, but right now he's paying a lot of attention. Kids benefit a lot from repeated events. And so if you get a routine down, it helps in several ways. It will help their memory. For example, if every bedtime, your kid is 2 years old, every bedtime the same things happen. The mom says or dad says, whoever is responsible that day, says, it's bedtime, first we're going to go brush our teeth, right? So you go brush the teeth, whatever, and then maybe you read a story. And maybe you only read one story or two stories, whatever. And then maybe there's some singing. I don't know what there is. These don't have to be there. But what needs to happen is the same thing needs to happen almost every night. What does this give the child? This gives the child a firm base to start thinking about the past. Because, we said they're not good about thinking about yesterday, thinking about tomorrow. But when events are repeated, then they become more able to think about the past based on these scripts. It also provides children with comfort knowing that the event, children whose lives have no rules and no predictability try to control them by putting rules by themselves. You might see obsessive behaviors and others. So this is really extreme cases where, child doesn't know where they're going to sleep that night, what's going to happen. So they start to put their own rules. So the children need routines. And it helps both emotionally, because it brings predictability to their lives, comfort, but it also helps with memory development. So that is why so sometimes parents say, well, we can never get our child to sleep in his room, and you ask, have you tried? And the parents say yes. And then you ask, how consistently did you try? The parents say, yes, it was very consistent. But when you start asking, what did you do on day 1? What did you do on day 2? What did you do on day 3? It becomes quickly observable that they actually gave up on day 3, for example. Or they're like, well, that day we were going out, there was a jazz concert. This day we were doing this. There was something on TV. Another day he cried a lot, so we let him sleep on the sofa. And so every day has an excuse attached to it. And so then there is no routine, right? There is the idea of well-intentioned parents wanting to set a routine, but no routine. Did you have a question, Ipek? Yes.
How is it different from classical conditioning? Like when I hear someone taking measures.
Classical conditioning, remember, is with certain types of behavioral responses that are mostly related to reflexes, right? Or basic needs. And you're not conditioning the kid to do something. This is a meaningful event, a story that the kid understands. The kid understands, what do we do when we go to McDonald's? And this is not classical conditioning. You're not conditioning the kid with a Big Mac. You know what I mean? And so that's that. What's interesting is, for a long time we thought about kids' semantic memories, and it makes a lot of sense to us that kids know very little and adults know a lot, right? We expect young children to know less than adults. There's nothing weird about that, right? But the thing is, we later learned that children can actually show more improved both knowledge and memory performance for things that they are experts in. Think Pokemon cards. Are there Pokemon cards still? No.
But there are magic cards now.
What magic cards? Yes.
The gathering.
Does everybody know about magic? Am I the only one who doesn't know about magic cards? No.
Kind of a nerd thing.
It's a nerd thing. What is on these cards?
Like characters with certain abilities. So you play strategy games with, a group.
Very nice. Of course, like in the States, they have baseball cards, for example, right? I don't think are there football cards in Turkey? Huh. Were they around when you guys were kids? You had cards too? Yes. Okay. Well, we didn't have any cards. So I come from an ancient era where they had stickers that were sold in packages, but there were no cards. And so possibly then, your knowledge of these football players, even though you didn't know very many numbers, for example, the numbers on their jerseys, were far greater. Your ability to group them. How can you group football players? By team, mevkiye göre, by which position they play, right? Midfielder, left, midfielder, right, defense, offense, whatever it is, right? And you would be able, although you probably weren't very good at classification, let's say we are thinking you're 7, you could maybe flexibly reclassify according to team and then according to position, such that different teams' players would go into the same offense bin, for example, and so on and so forth. Here, Chi actually has done this 1978, it's the classic work. She has many others after that, but has shown that 3 to 8-year-old children who are good at playing chess remembered chess configurations, meaning how the chess pieces were placed on the chessboard, better than adults who knew about chess but weren't particularly good at it. Interesting, right? So it's not that the memory does develop, semantic knowledge does develop, but when children become experts in something, their thinking and their memory for those things might actually show improvements, and even it could be above novice adults. Well, you actually try to align those changes with natural developments that are happening, such that your child stops needing you, for example. That you can start telling your child, okay, you can look at your beds. You now know many stories. You can look at your books in bed before you fall asleep, right? But your child was probably 5 years old, 6 years old. And you can keep doing it until your child's 7. Your child learns how to read. You can say, well, now, like, you know, mommy and daddy does this too. You maybe read a little bit and then you fall asleep, but you read in bed. And so you don't do these abrupt changes just because the child is 4 now, but you kind of align them to the child's needs and developmental level too. You might get a child with whom you have to do this longer than another one, right? For example, kids will tell you too. They will. They'll tell you when they're done with something, because they're very much interested in growing up. Like a child doesn't try to stay a baby naturally. If the child is trying to stay a baby, then there is an emotional developmental issue that needs to be resolved. But most children want to grow up.
So if they refuse to change, it means that it's not the right time.
It may not be the right time, or it could be a practice that is wrong that has been kept on. For example, say parents have been sleeping with the child for the past 8 years. Now the child won't sleep in his or her own room, at which point it is not because the child isn't ready anymore. The parents have probably forced a behavior that they don't want to be continued for a longer than necessary period. There will be tears and it's going to be difficult. I mean, those kinds of things might be difficult. So not every change is the same either. Yes?
So, according to Piaget, the schemas were the actions.
Constituted of actions at first.
How it differs with scripts.
Scripts are of events. It's a good question. Scripts are of events. Schemas could be of any action. So for example, you could have a schema of how to open a bottle, right? You hold the bottle, you hold the top, and then you turn it. Schema. But an event is, for example, you and I going to have a rakı night. It's an event. It's not a small, like, do you know what I mean? It's an event. There are multiple action sequences that are meaningfully related to one another. It makes a story. Why? I don't understand the word bureaucracy there. Yes, bürokrasi uzun demek değil yalnız. Ha. Sen çıkar o bürokrasi lafını. It doesn't help your argument at all. When it makes a story, bir hikaye anlattığında, but it's a prototypical story. For example, birthday party. It's a script. What's in a birthday party? There's a cake, right? There's a cake, there are candles burning, somebody blows the candles, everybody goes either happy birthday or iyi ki doğdun. And, and there are presents. This is a script, right? But the birthday you once had at Kaş while you were skydiving is not a script. That's an autobiographical memory, right? How to blow a candle is a schema. And yes, scripts are based on schemas, of course. All right. So episodic memory is recall of personal experienced events, and it's limited in infants and toddlers, and children get better at retrieval at ages 3 or 4. Obviously, semantic knowledge contributes to development. There's a bi-directional path between episodic and semantic knowledge. And children must acquire what's called mental time travel, meaning children must be able to project themselves back in time or forward in time, right? So the ability to think about what am I going to do tomorrow is mental time travel into tomorrow. You imagine yourself tomorrow, right? Or mental time travel back. Ecem was in Istanbul with her family over the weekend, personal information being shared about the TA. And so if I asked her, what were you doing Saturday night? She will mentally, you don't have to tell us, she will mentally travel back in time. And let's imagine her having a nice meal with her family, right? And so, yes, gözleri doldu falan. Yes. So mental time travel are important. Schemas are usually in scripts, but they could also be, yes, schemas are units of thought for Piaget. They're not just memories, they're units of thought. How to do, how to accomplish something, right? Like, as I said, how to open a bottle is a script. So is a schema, I'm sorry. So schemas are more in how to resolve problems in the world, what to do. They are first based on action, but then they rely less and less on action. So obviously, the line between script and schema as children get older, because their schemas are going to get more verbal, is going to be different. But schemas are for smaller units of actions, where scripts are routines and longer. Whereas autobiographical are one time. So that one time when İpek was skydiving in Kaş is going to be autobiographical memory. Amanın scripts. Yes, we talked about this. I'm not going to talk more about it. Autobiographical memory, long-lasting representations of one-time events. Whoever is in a long-term relationship, I don't know what long-term means at your age. Whoever has been dating for more than 6 months. Yeah, I mean, no, I don't. I mean, sorry, but tabii, congratulations. And so what it is like, if I asked you, when did you first, don't tell us, when did you first meet, right? When did you first decide, or both of you understood that you were dating? I mean, the hope is that both sides know that they're dating, right? This is very important. It was a problem when I was your age too. There was that unsure period where you didn't know whether the other party thought you were dating or not. I don't know why it was so difficult to ask, but it was also unaskable. Like, you wouldn't ask either. And then you have these very vague, long conversations, don't you? Biz ne yapıyoruz şimdi? But in any case, those events are one time, they're special, and they are not, hopefully they're not scripts. Hopefully you're not dating someone every other day, such that, and always in the same way, such that they do become scripts. Now the basis for these develop after age 2. Why age 2? Why does Toprak not have autobiographical memory yet? Oh, yes, I like it when you take me seriously and answer these questions. You were just biting your nail. You weren't going to answer. Defne. Defne değil mi? Yes, bak. Hiç ummuyordun herhalde. Yes. Why after İpek? Very nice. İpek, come home with me. But also, this is what you know so far. If I had asked this question to you 2 weeks from now, then you would also tell me that self has not fully been constructed yet. It's because we're going to see that too. You know, we saw I mean, just giving you a teaser here of what's to come. But for example, we saw that babies, when they are shown their own leg kicking and another kid's leg and they're wearing the same onesie, kids actually realize which one is theirs and which one belongs to somebody else, because they understand that there's this congruence between what they feel they're doing, right? And so they can recognize their own movements in their legs while they're not looking. So that's understanding one little part of self. But understanding self, where it starts, where it ends, understanding continuity of self, that you are the same person you were yesterday. That although you were very different, for example, Mohammed looked very different 10 years ago, I assume, right? You were shorter and stuff. He's the same person. You know, when he goes back, he's no longer looking for physical similarity in that memory. He knows it's him. Okay, I'm also very curious. So right diagonally across from Mohammed, you are sitting with your glasses. What is your name? Yes. Hanzade. Okay, very nice. This I won't forget. This is unforgettable. Also, we did test a Hanzade at the lab. A 4-year-old Hanzade came and contributed data with her mother. So these days I'm hearing the name more. And so the same thing applies to Hanzade as well. She knows who she is. Not only does that happen, but as you grow older, especially in adolescence, you start building a life narrative. What kind of person I am? How has life treated me so far? How have I fared with life's challenges? Because I'm a persistent person, I'm a perseverant person, I'm a righteous person. My friends always do me wrong, but I'm also a very kind-hearted person. You tell these stories to yourself. The development of it starts at age 2 and will continue forward. We're going to talk. Language is also very important. And language also indicates mental representation too. We also know that children who start talking do not actually tell autobiographical memories yet. So we know that it's not because they're not talking that we don't know about their autobiographical memories. They do have episodic memory. They can remember what they did. But autobiographical is being able to tell a coherent narrative about what happened that is related to the self. And that starts around 2, and parents help a lot. How do parents help? Because parents keep going over the memories that they experience with the child. And I sometimes am very saddened that parents of young children are very energetic and they find very creative activities to do over the weekends. They take their children to places, but sometimes they don't talk. It's almost as if the parent is a bus driver who puts the child in the car and drives the kid to the zoo or drives the kid to this museum or that workshop. But there is no conversation about it. What is going to stay with your child once that activity is done is the memory of it. If you don't help your child remember it, the memory won't stay. Not in that way. So if you go to the zoo with your child, for example, it makes a lot of sense to talk before you get to the zoo. You're in the car, you're going. Maybe a few days before, you buy a few more books about animals. You ask the child which animal the child would like to see, right? You're driving, you say, which animal are you more excited about? You know, you remember we won't be able to feed these animals. You know, you get there, you go through, you get back in the car. If the child's not sleeping, you start talking. Which one did you like the most? Did you see the monkeys? How funny were they? What are you doing? Consolidating the memories of the child. You're not just passing time. It's not geek muhabbet, not with a 3-year-old. That talk actually helps children form and remember memories. There are studies that show that parents have different styles of eliciting memories. There are cultural differences, though I am not sure of where we stand in Turkey, but studies are being made at ODTÜ right now. And once I learn, I'm going to talk about it too. But for example, Western North American mothers are more elaborative in their style, meaning they basically Ask the child open-ended question. How did you feel when you saw the monkeys? What was the funnest thing about the zoo? Whereas Asian parents are apparently a little bit more fact-driven. How many monkeys were in the cage? And, you know, which animals did you see? Tell me all of them. What kind of birds were there? So they're looking for closed-ended. Neither of it is bad or good, by the way. It just facilitates, though, mothers with different styles have children who remember different things, right? And so how you elicit a memory from your child, your style of talking, has contributions to the way your child starts being able to recollect the past. Memory does rely on imagination. However, the place at which we exercise imagination to its fullest is probably not memory. So in eliciting memories from your child, you probably aren't training their imagination in terms of creativity. You do that with play, you do that with book reading, you do that with storytelling, right? But when you are trying to get your child to remember a memory, you're actually doing something else. You're using time travel to get your child to anchor themselves in time and recount an experience that they have had before. So I don't know if a parent, say, the research says that they ask more factual information and they may repeat the information for Asian parents, but are they doing a disservice to the child's imagination? My gut feeling is no. I would need more evidence with different types of conversation contexts. But is it an empirical question? Yes. Has this research also looked at creativity? No. I can tell you that much. I mean, I read the original articles.
So we don't.
I would say we don't know, but I, as a researcher, don't see enough ground to look at it. I mean, I can discuss it with you later on too, but I don't see a research question that follows directly from it, but maybe you can persuade me otherwise too. Okay? Yes, girls are usually better organized and detailed in their tellings of what they experienced. Drama mı? What about drama?
I always do it. I remember all the things in an organized way, and to create drama, I use them a lot.
I see. Also, we have to keep in mind that girls are marginally better at verbal abilities than boys at younger ages. At younger ages. I don't imply here that, okay, who are you with glasses? Right next to Gökhan. No, seni biliyorum zaten. İpek, I know you, İpek. Yes. We collected data together. Very nice, İpek. So I'm not implying that İpek's language abilities is better than Gökhan's. That is not happening, right? But when we are looking at 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, we see a slight trend for girls to have more vocabulary. İşte. In-class activity böyle unutulur. I had the in-class activity with me, which means I'm going to give it on Monday. Eyewitness testimony. Why do we care about children's memory? Later, I'm going to finish this chapter. Why do we care about eyewitness testimony? Because you were going to answer the question. I thank you very much. You usually have questions, so I thought you were going to ask a question. Let me go over it. Because I mean, we sometimes need children's input on something that they have experienced. And also there is sometimes, unfortunately, there's crimes where children are the victims and there are no other witnesses, right? Usually crimes against children happen where other people don't see it. And so in that case, it has become a very important area of research to actually look at how much do children remember. How accurate is their memory? Are they suggestible? Can they be led to give answers that are wrong, right? We do know that preschoolers' testimony is a little bit less reliable than school-aged children's. They have less developed language skills. They also have a desire to please. So in the tasks that we do with children, we try not to ask the same question and again and again. That's why it's very important. Like in the developmental lab, when we're testing, we try to refrain from making mistakes, because when you ask the question again, the child will change their answer, right? So you realize that you asked the wrong question, wrong order. If you go back and ask it again, the child will probably tell you the other answer, because they want to please you and they think they've said it wrong. They have poor source monitoring, so they're worse at remembering where they got this information from, right? So when you study for the exam, I am not going to, for example, when we were being tested at midterm 1, Banu had a problem remembering something that I knew she knew. I know she knows it. Like, we were making eye contact as I was talking. And she asked, I just can't remember this. Of course, I can't give her the answer. I couldn't. But I had started explaining it. You know how I ramble? I talk a lot. I had started that part by saying, how do you learn from me? Intermodal perception. And I said, how do you learn from me? Think. And I left, and she had written it, right? Now, if she were to go back and to reflect, she knows that she didn't read that in the book. She would remember that she was in class. She would remember I was standing right here. She would remember that she was sitting right here, right? That is source memory. Remembering when and where you got that information, right? Whether you read it in a book, whether somebody told you, whether I told you. So children have poorer source monitoring, meaning they're worse at remembering whether they saw it themselves, somebody else told them, which is bad, because if somebody suggested false information, for example, the child's mother says, shh, this is the guy who broke into our house, this is the thief, the child is more likely to think that she saw the thief as this guy, right? They have a bias towards specifics, they have less gist memory, they have less skill with autobiographical narratives and may leave out important details, and they are more suggestible. This doesn't say you can't get information from children, though. I don't want to leave you with that idea. If children are interviewed in appropriate ways, and cognitive developmental psychology has done a lot of this research, then they can be reliable witnesses. But how we retrieve information from children is as important as what they remember. And that's what I want to leave you with. I am not going to go into this. We also know that metacognition develops. So awareness, metacognition, which Miri Hoca does. She does meta-memory, a type of metacognition. And it's awareness and understanding of various aspects of thought. It develops with knowledge about mental activity, knowledge about understanding cognitive capacities, strategies, and task variables. So it's the child's knowledge of understanding, what does knowing mean? What does remembering mean? What does guessing mean, right? And so these are abilities that develop as the child gets older. The child also learns about the mind, how the mind works. Meaning, how do how do other people get to have beliefs? How do beliefs relate to their behavior? And so these two also help the development of metacognition. When we say the knowledge of the mind, we understand it develops from early childhood to adolescence. 2 to 3-year-olds will use mental state terms, meaning they will say, I know. They won't say no all that much, but they're usually going to use emotion words. And they're going to use a lot of motivation words, such as want. A 2-year-old keeps wanting. I want this, daddy, I want that, right? I want a new toy, I want French fries, I want hamburger, I want Monte. That want, does it mean they understand what want is? Do they understand 2 people may want different things? No. They only know what they want. We will talk about theory of mind. And 2 to 3-year-olds conceptualize the mind as a passive recipient of information. If somebody says, I know. If I see, I know. But 3 to 4-year-olds also show limits in their understanding of the mind, because they, for example, think that thinking is something you do actively and the mind can stop thinking. For example, if we show them pictures of a person waiting at the bus stop and say, is this person thinking? 2, 3-year-olds are like, no. Dead brain activity, vegetative state. Like, so it's the same when they're shown a picture of somebody looking at pictures or reading books. And preschoolers are confused about mental processes. By school age, think 7 years old and older, children develop an understanding of sources of knowledge. Where did I hear this from? Is this a first-hand knowledge? Inference versus second-hand. And this, I'm going to stop here, but hear me out with this last sentence. This also is very interesting to study in Turkish. Why? Yes. Yes, what about mishmush, Ebrar? We code second-hand knowledge. When knowledge is second-hand or inference, it could be inference to Mish does the same thing with inference, right? Inference çıkarım. For example, you don't know whether your mom is home. You like turn the key in the lock, come in. You say, annem gelmiş. My mom has arrived. Why do you say that? Because you see her shoes. And you say mish there because it's an inference. You didn't see your mom yet. You saw her shoes. Mish. Or your father told you your mom has arrived. You use the same thing. That's why it's very interesting to study in Turkish. See you next Monday.